Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deep 3. Today, my guest is Lamar Barrett, an NBA scout, and he also coached me in college. So for me, it's a special podcast. What's up, Lamar?
What's up, Vlad? Man, appreciate having me on. It's always a pleasure to when former players are doing great. And I know you've been great in your playing career, but like I know you're starting to get into your next phase of your career, which I think is tremendous. A lot of guys don't think it's life after basketball, but you've been always been steps ahead.
I appreciate that, man. I mean, just going back, the first thing when somebody mentions your name or when I see it, I just think about, I chose to work out with Lamar pre-draft, and I still don't regret it. I could have went to a lot of trainings, but I thought, just know Lamar from back then. He was invested in it. I mean, he loves the game just like I do. And he put a lot of time as soon as I basically finished the season my senior year a little bit earlier than expected. And then he was in the gym with me all the time, just working me out. I remember you were watching all the stuff about combine, like what I do at the combine, and all that stuff, so he can put me through it. So I really appreciate that, man. Every time I
No,
connect
you're
with you, I
welcome,
think
man.
about that. So how is it now? Now, like being an NBA scout compared to coaching.
A lot of people always ask, hey, like you're missing it. This has been a part of my life, for the last, before this year, 23 years, 24 years. And, it was something I wanted to do probably 3, 4 years ago. I've always wanted to do NBA scouting. And you know what? The difference is you don't get on the court stuff, but you're still going out evaluating kids, and especially college kids. And but you also have a life, Vlad. That's the luxury. Like my hours aren't consistent, 12 to 15 hour days anymore. I don't have to work, 350 to 355 days out the year anymore. You got a chance to, every day, like, probably during the season, I had a chance to go out and watch, close to 100 games. Not that's just live games at various tournaments and all across the country. Um, but then I was also home most nights because being here, you can live almost anywhere, and being living here in the Washington D.C. area, in the DMV area, I was fortunate to see, Maryland or Georgetown. I could see every Big Ten team that came through here to play Maryland. I could see every Big East team that came through here to see Georgetown. I also had George Mason and GW in the Atlantic 10. And and then if I wanted to go to Richmond, I could go see VCU and Richmond if they were playing someone, or I could drive up to Philly, to see Villanova or Temple or whoever. So I didn't have to go as far, and I was home most nights, except for the tournaments in November, which was busy. But for the most part, man, I was home most days. I do a report every 2 hours a day in the morning, but I was home. And my wife, at first, we've been married for, we've been married for 15 years. We're going to go on 16 years, and she used to always say, "When you going on the road again? When you going on the road again?" When I was coaching, because but with this, it became I was home almost every day when she got off of work. She got off of work at 3:30. She left, 7:30 in the morning. She was back at home by quarter to four. I was home most days because by the time if I was going to a local game, I didn't leave out the house until 5:30, and so she was happy, and I stayed in my bed most nights. So I didn't travel a ton, but I got to see a lot of basketball, and that was the best thing. I still got to do what I love to do.
Yeah, I mean, just like me, you're a basketball junkie, so you can't live without it. But that's
Correct.
a lot of people, especially overseas. I don't know how much they know about college coaching life. We'll get into that right now since we're at it. How grueling it is as far as a job, and it's not. Like I remember, coming to shoot in the morning at like 8 a.m. Whatever. You guys were in the office already, and then it's what practice was like 3:30, 3:45. So you guys stand in the office basically for 8 hours. Now it's time to practice. Now maybe somebody does a little bit extra stuff after practice. You still got to
Yep.
be there. So like you basically like at least 12 hours a day you're there,
Correct.
doing different stuff. Uh, taking care of knuckleheads. But it's and it's a 24/7 job. Like you get home, you're still recruiting, you're still calling, kids, you're texting kids. you're never really, you don't have time to just like relax and enjoy it. So I'm really happy for you as far as being home with your family and all that stuff. But tell me the difference, let's say, about scouting as far as personnel, what you're doing right now, and what you were doing like scouting in college. Maybe compare it to not just scouting in the season. I think that's different, but just you were going out to high schools, right, to watch these kids play, and like,
Correct.
hey, can he play at my level? Can he play at American, at Hofstra, at Old Dominion,
Yeah.
whatever? So how is this different? Because I mean, you're looking for talented players, but of course the talent is different. And right now, most likely you're looking at the man on that team, or the second option. You're looking at highly talented players. But how is that approach for you? Going into a high school game and when you're recruiting for a college, compared to now when you have to scout NBA talent.
Yeah, like when you at the college level, man, and you've already, the one thing about it is you identify talent, through the scouting services. You always want to trust your own eyes, and so when you have names or people you have relationships with, through AAU or through high school, you go out and evaluate those kids. You're looking for a certain fit for your program, and when you're looking at that fit, like you just said, you always want to get great players or very good players, and when and when you're looking at those players, you gotta, also be realistic to say and I have a chance of getting that kid. So, and my mindset, in recruiting has always been no matter what level I've been at, from Central Connecticut in the low major to, to the highest being at Old Dominion and Conference USA was a mid major plus or Hofstra, like being in those leagues, it was always find the best player that had a chance to be rookie of the year in the league, who had a chance to be an all league player as a sophomore, junior, or senior, and who also had a chance to be player of the year. And if you can get those kids, because you got to think of it as not just a 1 year term, you got to think of it as a 4 year term. If you can, think about getting those kids every year, then your program is going to continue to be better just because you're getting really good players who, also are great character kids and like you're gonna always continue to win if you can get those type of players. So from a high school standpoint, that's what you went looking for. What's the fit to your program? Because a kid who's really good might not fit your program. You play for Jeff Jones, and so like every kid can't play for him. He does a tremendous job of coaching, but you also got to have guys who can fit his system. And so, when I was at Hofstra, it was the same way. You needed four, if you were a 1 through a 4, you got to be able to pass, dribble, shoot. So it's all about fit, all about personnel, it's all about character. And then when you get to you start looking at NBA talent. Now, you go into the job and you start saying it's kind of changed a little bit, Vlad, especially with the G League now. And so when you go in and you look at kids now, you evaluate them and say, okay, can this guy be an NBA player? Is he draftable? All right. So that's number one. Is he draftable? Then you got to look at it as, okay, can we take this kid and is he a possible G League guy that's going to develop in the G League? And then you can, a year or two down the road, is he going to be able to play in the NBA? Or is it a kid that you can draft or not draft, and then stash him over in Europe where he get a chance to play. So you're looking at different things now of how when you're drafting a kid or looking at a kid, and so you go out and you're always looking for, like I said, you want to look for the best available player. That's why you're watching all these guys. You got your top 100 list or guys on the top 100 list. You got to go evaluate them, but you don't know where you're going to fall in the draft. So that's why you have to evaluate all these kids and get as much intel. And 70% of my job is intel. Like you're investing a lot of money, so you need to know more about this kid, his background, how is he when he's not playing basketball. Like that stuff is very important. So
Yeah, what they eat for breakfast, like you gotta know everything, like
you know everything. So when you are you're going to evaluate, that's one thing, but you got to have a lot of information on these kids. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is the intel is way more detailed, at the NBA level than when you go to college. Yeah, you're looking at the player, but I don't know if you do as much investigating on the background. And that's why like you have some kids that come in and, you have character issues because you don't invest as much time into finding out everything you need to know about a kid.
I mean, to me, the best thing about this it is the intel because every time I've been overseas, the better intel coaches had, I feel like the better team we had on the floor because they could put the characters together.
Correct.
Because I've been on teams that, and the prime example for me is Turkey, where he literally just took everybody by stats from the previous year. Like, oh, you average 15, you're kind of like, like he signed guys like that. And to me, it was just a way to fail. I mean, it
Mm.
was just not, we didn't match together as characters, and it just felt, it never felt like we clicked, even though on paper we had a really good team. And then I've been on teams where, like in Paul and Stelmet, when I had a really good coach, he took guys that maybe averaged like 3 points per game like the year before, and he made him like a rotation player. And he's like, everybody for the season was like, man, like what is he doing? Like what in the world? Why is he signing this guy? And it was just like that. Like with me, the
Yeah.
situation that year was I didn't play my second part of the year. So when I signed with a team that won the championship and we lost in the finals and I played maybe 8 minutes a game, everybody was like, what is going on? Like, why is he signing him?
Mm.
On top of that, he started me. Everybody's what is this? And then I had a really good season. Everybody's like, well, oh, okay, he's a different player in that system. He got the intel about me, about my character, how I fit in with his plans as far as like, playing as a team. Am I the
Yeah.
type of guy that goes rogue? Like, do you get down 20? Is he the type of player that really is going to go crazy? He's going to go put up 20 shots or whatever. So that's really good right there. Well, back to college stuff. I have a question because I've been intrigued by that, right? Since I was
Good.
recruited. So you get calls, you get calls, right? Like I don't know, Pittsburgh calling me, right? I mean, Kentucky calling me. I get a call from my store, like I think you use UNC, right? And you get this calls and it's like, okay, cool, and it just feels like you're somewhere on the list, but it's not really. They're like, like we don't really like this guy, but maybe if we have like 8 guys ahead of him, maybe
Right.
we'll look at him. So you get that kind of feeling, and you also have these coaches that are always like, so who else is recruiting you? I'm like, I understand it because they might be like, okay, am I competing with Kentucky?
Right.
I get that. So, if I'm competing with Kentucky, I'm not going to recruit you, right? But why? Why those two things? Really, I was like, why? It was like a huge why for me as far as like, the recruiting process, scouting, and all this stuff.
Yeah, like what's interesting. Like the one thing you said second was the question that bothers me, and I'm not a big fan of it. Is um, who else is recruiting you? And
That's it.
and it's like it's funny. The best kids that I've ever recruited, when the coaches ask that, like, who else is recruiting you, those kids have actually turned out best. That no one else was really, like it didn't matter who was recruiting them; they were a good player. So when you ask that question, like, who else are you recruiting? Who else is recruiting them? Like, I think it's one of those. A lot of coaches, and I can say this now, is they look for the home run. They look for the home run signing. They look for they want a guy with a name. It's a splash because
Yeah.
it's when you go to boosters and you go to alums, it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, I signed, Vlad Moldoveanu, who was an All Met player from St. John's High School in D.C." Instead of saying, "Oh man, I signed, Joe Smith from, uh, Patuxent High School, blah blah blah." Like it don't sound sexy. But if I say you played in the WCAC, you played for such and such AAU team, and you got these boosters and alums who giving dollars, it sounds good. So it's almost like they're trying to win the press conference because they can tell that to the guys who are donating dollars. And I think it's like one of the most overused, questions or terms in college athletics when it comes to players because a lot of times the guys that end up being the top guy in your recruiting class don't always end up being the top player. It's and so because no one can determine how hard when a kid comes into your program, how hard he's going to work, how he's going to be mean, there's plenty of stories that come across that this kid came in and he beat this guy out. You wondering why that freshman isn't playing, and that guy's playing, and how this guy became the star, but he never panned out. Just because um, you can't determine how hard a kid works, you can't determine how big their heart is, how much they want it, how hungry they are. That's the one thing you can't value when it comes to recruiting. That's what I would say. And then like what you talked about, like you getting calls, like yeah, like you the lower you are, and I always say this, the lower you are from a recruiting standpoint. So if I'm at the Division 3 level, I gotta make calls, make calls, make calls. I'm at the Division 2 level, I'm gonna make less calls than at the Division 2 level. When I get to the low Division 1, I gotta make calls on the list. You get the mid major list, you're gonna make less calls than at the low major, and then you know by the time you get to the high major, those guys already know who they're recruiting. You know, in the ninth grade. It's just like they're so far ahead of everyone else recruiting wise, because from a money standpoint, that like you have most of those guys. If you're getting a call from a high major school in your senior year, you probably wasn't one of their priorities, unless you made a huge jump from, the summer of your junior year to your senior year. But for the most part, you know, you played with Chris Wright at St. John's. I mean, I think you played 3 years with him. His
Yeah,
freshman year, he's one of the best players in the WCAC. He was already on a high major recruiting radar, just for being one of the best freshmen in the area, in the Washington D.C. area. And then when he becomes a sophomore, you playing with him, he's still getting those interests, and then it's up to him when he decides to make his decision. Um, and so a guy like you would come over late, sophomore year, you're playing, and then like those same schools are coming in, but they see you and it's like, okay, if he, now you're on their list, but it's like if he becomes this, if he, he already can shoot the ball, he can do this, but what if he grows a couple of more inches? So you got to start calling those guys early, even though they have genuine interest. But the question is, how much did you develop? Um, how much did you develop to meet the standards for them? And so they call early to just, gauge an interest. And then if they want to come back down the road, that's when they'll go and recruit you hard.
got you. Yeah, I mean, the developer part right now is so different though when I compared to when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Just because if you think about it, there were no trainers back then, or at least I couldn't
No.
get one. Right. So like I'm so thankful for Coach D and then Coach Cole and Coach Murphy. They always in the gym with me, trying to work me out skill wise. But still, it wasn't the consistency. I think that what got me better. I think really when I transferred to AU was that I really had a year off and I could just consistently work on my skills every single day. And now it's like in high school they make these big jumps just because they have access to all this stuff.
Correct.
It's so different now. I think than when I was in. And like I said, you also have your list. And but I was always wondering how it works, and that why question has always kind of bothered me. Because I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm coaching at, I don't know, let's say American, right? And I know that, I know my level, I know Patriot League, I know the league, I know everybody. If I think that kid can play at a level, I mean, unless of course Kentucky's on him, which you'd know anyways, there's no reason to ask. I mean, what if that kid really tells me that, hey, I have a D2 school that's offering me, and they really like, is that really gonna make me think less of him? Or, I think it shouldn't be, whatever I think I should go with that. Like if I'm that good of a coach, if I'm that good of a recruiter and scout, I think I should, be
I,
able to
I
realize the
totally agree with
talent
you.
there.
I totally agree with you. And there have been kids who coaches have said, "Oh, they've been recruited by that school. Nah, nah, we're not gonna recruit them." And then the kid ends up being really good, and you're like, "But why did we recruit that kid, coach? You said you didn't want him,
You
and
don't want to.
blah blah blah." You know what I'm saying? So like, that happens. Like that happens in this business. I mean, like you said, I trust my eyes more than anything else. And if I got a gut feeling, if I look at you, and like I told you earlier, I don't look at a kid for next year only. I look for a kid for 4 years. How is he going to do? How is he going to progress? You know, listen, man, I recruit guys to be if I think you got a chance to be a pro, I'm gonna recruit you, and it's a development to that. And a lot of guys want to go from A to Z right away instead of developing their game. And guys and coaches want instant success. They want a guy to come in like, I mean, you're not finding too many CJ McCollums. You know, you played against them in the league. Like CJ went to the right level. CJ was freshman of the year in the league. He was also player of the year as a freshman. You're not finding those guys like that. It's very rare that you do that. And when it is, it's special. And so, same thing with, Muscala. Like, he was player of the year as a sophomore, but it's very rare that you find those guys that can come in right away as a freshman, play, and have that much success, unless you're special. And those are two guys that are in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? So, but for the most part, you're not finding freshmen like that. That's
they made the right decision though. That's something that
right decision. They made the right decision.
They made the right decision. I think is because, for example, I always think about it going back. I'm like, like I always wanted to play West Virginia for Beeline, and I don't care who came to gym. Who came?
That would have been a perfect system for you. That would have been a perfect.
My junior year, I didn't even care about like who's recruiting me. I mean, you call me, cool. Like I put my phone down, and I'm like, cool, yeah. They call me Big East, cool, yeah. Nope. Like all I care about was West Virginia because that was the system that I saw myself in, and but I wasn't, I didn't have the guidance really of somebody to really know college basketball like that to really explain me like, just be patient because West Virginia might fall through. And then when it kind of did, because of political reasons, I was like, I just want to go play right away, and I didn't take my time at that point. I feel like I should have taken my time and be like, like let me look at like the Americans and Lehighs because they were both recruiting me even back then, But I was like, you know what? I'll go Mason. It's like a mid-major, but it wasn't, the fit wasn't there as far as exactly what I wanted, what I needed.
Right.
So, like they made the right decision too. In the same time, because I remember CJ as a freshman. That's exactly when I transferred. He wasn't the focal point of the offense. They had Zahir Carrington, who was really a huge center for that league, as far as athleticism and everything. And, American was stacked at that point. And when Mike Muscala came into the league, he came and changed the league because he was big. That league didn't really have a center like that. Yeah, exactly. I was like, the league didn't have a center like that. In some ways, I came and changed the league. And then he came right back at it. Bucknell came right back at it. And I was like, whoa, how did this happen? Like,
I still say you had 3 of the best 5 players that ever played in the Patriot League at one time, which is crazy. I mean, at one time, that's amazing. 3 of the 5 best. You were in an era that like you played with 2 guys who ended up being in the NBA, and then you're gonna have a long career in the pros like that. So you're talking about 3 pros, but I mean that's how good the league was, back then. To have 3 of the top 5 players ever, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was a battle. I mean, every time we faced them, I still I was talking to Bryson Johnson about that. Like at some point, I was like, just about the Bucknell defense on me and all that stuff. We're just chopping it up. But yeah, it's crazy. So let's get back a little bit to like college basketball stuff. Like especially coaching. What do you miss most about coaching?
You know what? The most I missed is, the guys. Because, and it's not the, X and O's, the game day. It's the relationships you build with the players. Like, the one thing I've always prided myself on being a former player is, being there for guys when they need to talk. Because kids don't have, one thing they don't trust everybody on the coaching staff because they feel like what they say to you may go back to the head coach sometime, and sometimes you don't want to go back to the head coach. So like my relationship with the kid has always been, you come and talk with me, it goes no further. I mean, unless you say, Coach, I need you to relay this message to Coach. But I miss that part of it more than anything. Just I got into this business to help kids, and I want to, into college coaching because I want to, make sure kids do, they come into college as young boys, but they leave out as men because those are the 4 or 5 years of their life that changes them more than anything. I tell people all the time when their kids come to campus when they're 17, 18 years old, I tell the parents, I thank them for doing a great job for rearing their kids for 17 to 18 years. Now it's my job to take that next step from young boy to a grown man because this is going to impact them for the rest of their life. This is going to teach them how to you know, be a man, how to stand on their own, like when they go through adversity, how they deal with it. And so I think those college years are some of the most important years of their life. And me putting an impact on their life, I get a joy out of that more than anything. And that's probably the biggest thing I miss a lot. Like coming down to the locker room, talking with you guys, just about life. Or, if you guys, like come and hang out with you in the dining hall, just grabbing lunch with you guys, just to see how you're doing. Instead of me, like always. Now I've been in a situation where players were afraid to come to the office because they didn't. It felt like they were coming to the principal office, and coach only called them over when they did something bad and not when they did something good. So, it's always important to say, "Hey, Vlad, man, how's your mom doing? How's things back at home?" Like instead of always like, "You're not doing this in the classroom or you're not doing this on the court." And I think a lot of times it makes kids feel a lot comfortable, and then the relationships you have with them go on for life. Like I worked with you for 1 year, and you had guys before, but like our relationship since 2010 has been unbelievable. We talk, 4 or 5, if not even more times a year. That's because of that 1 year that we built, together um, back in America, and that's what I miss more than anything. The relationship with the players, whether it's on the court or off the court, and just talking, trying to pass on my knowledge of basketball and life. So that's the biggest thing more than anything that I miss.
Yeah, well, like I still remember those days when you just come in, just argue LeBron, Jordan, say Kobe. We had Charles in there too. Shout out Charles. So it was just, but yeah, it was fun. Like when we saw each other, at the summer league last year, and we started talking about basketball. You were scouting, and I was just trying to learn some ropes about some stuff.
But
Uh, Charles was there too. So I mean,
Troy,
it was
Troy,
really
there,
fun.
Troy, yeah,
Oh, yeah, Troy was there too. So it was like a lot of us that just, we kind of stayed in the game for so long, and
yep,
we all had those conversations. But like you said, those things though, you can see coaches that really care.
right,
Uh, when coaches that come in and it's like, oh yeah, how you doing? And it's like kind of just, okay, let me just kind of, I don't care how you doing, but let me ask you, and then let's, like you said, like you're doing bad in the classroom. You're just not doing this on the court. Like, let's get you better at this. And it just sometimes as a kid, and um, okay, foreign kids may be different than local kids or whatever. It depends where
yeah,
you're from, right? I mean, I don't know, guys like Troy, maybe he was closer to home. He can go home more often. Uh, but in some ways, that was the not the father figures, but it's like just take on that role that you need somebody older that's not just a coach for you at that point in your life.
yep,
And there's offices that you kind of feel like you walk in and like you said, you didn't want to walk in. It's like, do I
right.
really want to
You
ask?
didn't.
And I didn't want
That's
to
why
ask the
you
question.
laugh when I
I was
said
like,
that. That's why you
yeah,
laugh when I said that because you like, yeah, it is like the principal office. Like that. That's how it
it
is
is.
though.
Sometimes it can be, yeah. And I think for some guys it was. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that on that staff, and even with Coach Jones, Coach Jones and I got along, so
Yeah,
it wasn't. But I know for some guys on that team, it was very different feeling. So it really
yeah,
depends on uh, a lot of things. But so let's say you get a good recruiting class, right? And kind of similar, let's say, to what we had at AU, kind of share roles and stuff like that. How are those meeting with coaches as far as like, I want to know, like, I'm curious about preseason compared to in season, compared to postseason, as far as when do you mostly talk about recruiting? When do you really just focus on basketball? And let's be honest, the grades become kind of second. It's not, they're not
right.
like, is he okay in class? Cool, he's okay, good. Let's move on to basketball. But and when do really, I assume that in the postseason you really hammer down recruiting. Like, can you talk to me about those three transitions? Because I think there's three different periods in college basketball that are very important.
Yeah, so especially in the all starts, and I always say that it starts in the spring of the year before,
Yeah.
because you're developing, you're going out in the spring trying to figure out if kids are good enough or not good enough for your program. So now you can go, you formulate a list. You see some of those kids for the following class. So like, these kids got missed out this year because of what's going on. So like, you know, you come out in April and then I can establish for the 2021 class, who should we be looking at in July? Because April, you go from April to July. How and then so you got a list of kids. You want to see what kids have gotten better and what kids have gotten worse. So in April, you formulate your list. You go back out in July, you look at them again to see if they're good enough. June, you want to try to get them to campus. Those kids you saw in April, excuse me, those kids you saw in April. May and June, you're trying to get them to campus. July, you see them again to evaluate. August, you want to try to get them back to campus for unofficial visits. But then in September, once school starts, now you're trying to get kids to campus on official visits. So and you want them to see campus, looking for the best weekend. Um, but at the same time, now you got to start getting ready for your team. And September 9th has always been the start date of recruiting in September, so you're allowed on the road from September 9th to October 5th. You can go out and see guys, and so you got to kind of mix in your recruiting and you got to do workouts, preseason workouts, as you were saying.
Yeah.
But the emphasis kind of shifts. You're always recruiting in this business, no matter what it is. But like, there are times that priority is over, other times. So, and that's why you got three full-time assistants. So, coach might have one guy that he loved doing workouts. He might have two guys that he like one on the road a lot. And so you just kind of, you got to balance. I was fortunate in most places I've been that I had a chance to do a lot of the workouts during the preseason, and you still got to be able to recruit as well. So you kind of got to balance it once it hits the fall, because once the season starts, you don't get out as much. There's days the coach gonna say, "All right, we need to get out and recruit," because if you haven't gotten players signed for the early signing period in November, and then it's times that you want to go out, he's gonna say, "No, I need you in practice." So you got to kind of balance and know your schedule ahead of time, just so that you can have that being in practice, getting prepared for the season, and being able to recruit players. And then once you know December around exam time comes, you can go out as much as you can because you don't have to be. A lot of times it's more workouts, not a lot of practices during exam time. So you're out at most tournaments and you're recruiting, trying to get if the guys you missed out on the early signing period, you're still watching them in December, but you concentrate more on your team in January and February. You might get out every once in a while, especially, games are usually Tuesday night, Friday night in high school basketball, but it might be something on the weekend if you're not playing, especially we played on Wednesday, Saturday. So you might get a chance to get out on a weekend, on a Saturday, especially if you play an afternoon game, you might be able to get out to an evening. So you get through that part, and then it gets back to once the season is over with, you're out a lot in the month of March before the Final Four because the kids that you hadn't signed early, now you got to, have a stretch to try to get some of those kids signed late. So the one thing you heard more than anything was recruiting, recruiting, recruiting went on all year long, no matter what. And then, postseason, you try to give guys a chance to recover, and then you'll do some postseason workouts before they go home for a couple of weeks during the summer. Because summer league became summer school became so big where you got kids coming to summer school and working out. In the Patriot League and the Ivy League, they try not to have summer school, but for the most part, everywhere else I've been, summer school, you had summer school for the summer, and you get to work with 8 kids for 8 weeks during the summertime. So, you know, that was another luxury. But to hit it on, it's always recruiting, 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 and then it's you throw in a mix of you got a chance to do preseason workouts. You're supposed to share the responsibilities for that and postseason. But when the season hit, head coaches don't go out as much. Your assistants are out. We kind of take turns when you're not doing scouting reports, like who's going to be out more than anyone else. So That's how it kind
Yeah,
of
that's
works.
what was crazy to me when I got to college. That as a coach, you don't only just have to coach your team, right? You're going to do scouting of the opposing team. You're going to have to do the the recruiting, which is like the crazy part was that during the season, right? As a pro coach, at least in Europe, you know, you only sign players or scout for 2 months in the summer or whatever, a month in
Right.
the summer, 3 months. But as a college coach, it's the same, right? Like you said, in December, you
It's a
might
grind. It's a
it
grind.
is.
It is a grind.
Yeah, like you might go recruit. Like we have practice on Monday night, and you still might be I don't know play Saturday. Let's say you leave Sunday morning and you come back Monday straight to practice or something. Like it was stuff like that crazy when I was talking to you guys, and I was like, man, that's right there. That's a lot of love for the game.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not as much as like to me college basketball. It is you know as a coach, of course, X's and O's like you said. But I feel like 90% is actually not X's and O's of college basketball.
It's not. It's no. You're 100% right. It's not. It's like so when you do get a chance to coach and get to the game, you like it's almost like you're relieved because like for those 2 hours, 3 hours, like you don't have to worry about you know you don't have to worry about anything else but coaching during that game. But like once the game is over, the thing is you might have to go to an event to like watch a kid play, or you're on the
If I have to
phone
call a kid,
calling the
I
kid.
remember getting calls. Hey, we're so and so, and we just beat, I don't know, Duke
Exactly.
at Duke.
It was
And you get
nonstop.
stats, and I'm like, really, man? Like, just go enjoy the win. Like, like right
It's
away,
nonstop.
recruiting back right at it.
And when you and look, you go on vacation, you guys get 5 to 10 days, and that's what people don't understand. Like, hey, I'm going on vacation, but like your vacation is not even vacation because it's usually during the month of August, sometimes it's in May. But you're on the phone, like calling recruits from the beach, making sure like, hey, campus. So like when do you actually have time? So and
Yeah,
that's what guys, you're starting to see more and more guys they love it. A lot of guys love it, but then they look at it and say, and I'm finding more and more of my friends have started going to the NBA scouting side. And that was one of the reasons I talked to a lot of people was because you had a life now, and um, it just becomes, you know, like I said, 12, 15-hour days. You going 7 days a week. It's no days off. Like there are no days off. And like and when you finish practice and you go home and I'm watching film, but like what happens when your phone got to be on because kid could end up going out, hanging out. You might get a call that he done got in trouble or he done got sick, so your phone is always on. So, man, it's so much that it's you said it 24/7. Like it does not stop. And then like you know, kid may like, coach, man, I'm starving. I don't have no money. Like what do I do? Like there's a lot of factors in this, man. It's a lot.
yeah. I mean,
And guys have
it's
no
a
idea.
complicated business. It's a complicated business. I always
Yeah.
thought.
And you gotta
Um,
love it. And like that's why a lot of guys don't leave it because you know you look at it when you the numbers are assistant coaches. The higher you go up, the more you make. And I've heard guys that say the reason why I couldn't leave is because when you making 150, 200, 250, 300,000, and it's like, okay, where am I going to find a job where I can get up in the morning, go into the office? I don't have to wear a suit or tie. I can wear sweats or shorts, and I'm in my office and working during the day. I get to get on the court and like, where am I going to make that money? What profession am I going to do that? And doing something that I've been doing since I was a young kid. I mean, it's hard, and that's why like guys kind of stay in it because it's comfortable and they don't think they can find anything else to do outside of coaching and then making that type of money.
true. True. I mean, that's a good point. It's the same as playing basketball. If you're a player,
Yes,
it's like
you won't
at the
play as
end, it's
long as
like, what do you do, right? You want to play as long as possible because I'm like, how am I going to make this money? Like so. I mean, it makes sense, but I have a steer, right? So I'm like, what do you guys do in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning? That if you show up at 12, what's the difference? I don't know. That is my theory. I'm like as a head coach, like right, maybe I want to think about coaching one day. So I'm like, if I was a head coach, I really want to bring my guys in at 9 a.m. I'm like, why just not give them until 12 and they come at 12 and we stay 12 to 6, whatever. And we're on top of our stuff because I feel like it's a lot of dead time anyways, right? And
Yeah,
just because you're
everybody's
home, and I
correct.
mean, it's my staff, right? So I hired, like whatever. And I feel like it's not like you would not recruit if you're at home because you'd be at home on your phone anyways. So you would get those phone calls, you would get that stuff. You still watch tape.
Correct.
I feel like it would just release a little bit of the stress of on the coach's side, And I mean, right here we're not talking like the Kentuckys of the world, because like you said, it's a total different ball game. When you're up in those numbers as far as like
Yeah.
assistant coaching. I'm just saying like lower level. I think it can be that way too. I don't see why not. I mean, of course you
Well,
guys
Vlad,
got tickets.
the thing about it is times have changed, and so the old school mentality was, and you got a lot of the older guys in it. What you understand is you had to outwork the next guy. It was always about outworking the next guy. What can I do to outwork the next guy? So it sounds great when you say, "Oh, I'm in the office from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m." Or like now it wasn't you wasn't using cell phones as much. You wasn't using cell phones. Like 20, 25 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. So like you were in the office making calls, whether it was early in the morning or late at night. So now, like you just said, is if I want to be on the beach at 3 o'clock during the day, or I want to be at home, I can be at home making phone calls to those same recruits. I could be doing that. But like it's this old school mentality of you're not working hard, you're not grinding, you're not like someone's out working you because you're not in the office. That's what has to change with a lot of these guys. And it's like, Roy Williams said something best a few years back. He's like, if I had to do it all over again, I would probably spend more time with my family because he was taught the way. I mean, that's what a lot of guys miss out on is their family because they like in the office for 10, 12, 14-hour days. So you miss out on that, taking your kid to school. Um, you miss out watching him play in a basketball or football or baseball game or running track or whatever he's doing, or like that play that you miss or something like that. Because and it depends on who you work for. Because some guys are not family oriented guys. Like yourself, you're a family oriented guy. So you want your staff to spend a lot of time with their family because like once the season starts, there's not going to be a lot of family time. Like you're not going to be, you're going to be away from them and stuff like that. So, but some coaches don't do that. Some coaches, they want to be away from their family. I mean, it's just how it is. So it's different. Different people do, different things. You have some guys who are great. Like, one thing, and it's always an old saying, like, you got to make sure you're in before the head coach, and then you make sure you don't leave before the head coach. So you always, everybody knew that JJ was getting in around 9 o'clock most days. So you want to be in the office before he's there, or you might have something to do before he got there, before you guys met that day on recruiting, or you talked about, um, the next scout or things like that. So you might be in there prepared, but for the most part, especially when I was there, it was always easier for me to leave and beat traffic and to get there early. And then if I wanted, because of traffic in DC, but for the most part with JJ, he was, long as you was in the office 9:30, he didn't have a problem. And the one thing about JJ was when practice was over, he was out. He didn't stay around. Same thing with games. Like the game was over, he's a competitor, he was a player, and he understands emotions are high. So when the game was over, he would rather for you to, not even really talk about the game, win or lose, go home, think about it, and then you come in the next day and you talk about it because like emotions are very high and like you're not thinking it might be something like we might go back and look at some film that's something we saw in the game that we did or didn't do or we thought we did or didn't do and but like you didn't have to worry about that with him because he had a photogenic memory and he could remember everything. He didn't need film, so
Yeah,
but no, it's just different. Coaches got different
yeah,
styles. Like it sounds like, if you're a head coach one day, you're a family guy. You're gonna allow your guys to spend as much time with their family and things of that nature, because you still don't get the work done no matter what. It's not like um, like a guy who works 8 hours a day. I mean, how much a guy working 12 or 14 hours is really outworking? I mean, you get to a certain point that you're not that productive anymore. I mean, like you said, and a lot of it is dead time. Like a lot of it. How many times you gonna read that email over and over and over again? So that's how you got to think of it. So yeah,
That's true. That's true. So now going back, kind of going back to the NBA stuff right now. Other than your family, of course, you get to be home. And
yeah.
how do you prepare right now for this upcoming draft? Everything being so off, it's no scout, no GM. They haven't had a chance to deal with it ever before, so it's new to everybody. And how do you get ahead basically at this point? Other than like you're talking about intel on the players, right? I mean, they could be a draft without any workouts.
Yes.
Like how do you go into such a big part of the NBA off season, right? How do you approach all this?
Well, the one thing about it is this process hasn't stopped for guys on this side. So you're still, all the notes and all, like, when you go out and you do your report, after each game or after a few games, and you submit, those are all, in the database. But then now it's like you're meeting with your team, um, you know, 3 hours a day, 2 times a week, and you're discussing players and personnel and fit, scenarios. What if we get this draft? What you're looking for. So all of that stuff is going on now. You're going on as if, all the teams are doing this. You're going on as if there is a draft. There's going to be a draft in June, even though it's probably going to be moved, back to August, September. But you kind of have to still go on as if this is going to be a draft. That's why, 90% of the season was done. The only thing that wasn't done was a few of the conference tournaments and the in the NCAA tournament. But for the most part, you've seen, you know, guys multiple times. And then the only thing is you don't get them into workouts. You don't get to see their measurements. You haven't seen how healthy they are. And there's some kids that you want to see, like some mid-major kids like yourself. You would want to see them against, another high major guy in a workout just to see it. Like that part you don't get to see. You get the same with their team, but it's like, okay, what do they look like in an NBA workout and stuff like that. So you don't get to see that, but you still got to go on what you saw during the season, and trust your own eyes from what you saw. And then even going back and watching film Vlad, like you still watching film on guys. Like I watched film last year, Michigan State, two of the guys off that team playing against Duke in the Elite Eight last year. So like anything that you can grab and see, anything, like that can help some of these guys, then, that's what you're doing. Always, like I said, always looking at film, always you got notes, you got conference calls, talk with guys, calling the college coach, calling the academic advisor, strength and condition, getting all this intel. So constantly you're still doing something, getting ready for the draft.
To me, I think it's the high major kids are not have nothing to lose, and actually, I think lower high major kids have a lot to win. Because, like you said, you're not going to have a chance to the mid majors. So I think when it's going to come down on the board to a good high major kid and I wouldn't say average, they're still good players, but like an average high major, I feel like a lot of teams would be like, I'll go with a high major kid because I know the level he competed at. And
Well,
I had a chance. I didn't have a chance to work out.
You'll be shocked with that. Like, it's changed a little bit because now is back in the day they would rather take the guy at Duke or Carolina or whoever that was averaging 8 points a game than to take because they just felt like that was the way to do it. But now they'd rather have a mid-major guy who's averaging 20, 22, 24 because they don't. You know what I'm saying? Like it's changed a little bit. Like that's why you're seeing more and more guys. You're like, hey, who is that? Who is that? Like they're in the league because it's guys like like they want guys who are productive. Like if you notice the game changed. Like look how much like scoring now. Like can you put the ball in the basket? Or are you gonna be able to, be a fit? So that's why I say it's changed a little bit because, like, if the NBA is the day, like if it was fast forwarded from you when you played 10, 11 to now, like you'll be the prototypical four man in the NBA because you can stretch the floor, shoot it, put it on the floor. Like the game has changed so much. Like back then, I mean, you had the Turkaloos and guys like that. But if you look at it now, like if you are, we talk about it like a big kid like Andre Drummond, right in Detroit, who's making a ton of money. Like those guys have become invincible. He got traded this year for basically a bag of chips and an apple. Like Luka Garza at Iowa, you know, 5 years ago, he's a lottery pick. What I'm saying? He's the first team All American. He averaged 23 and 10. But now the NBA has changed so much. You're not taking a guy like him in the lottery because you don't need five men who like, the first thing they're asking is, you know, can you guard on multiple on a ball screen? Can you switch out on the guard? Can you, they're not worried about throwing the ball into the post and if you can score. Like they're worried about if you can cover ball screens. You know, can you switch? That's what they want to know. Like that's why guys like Clint Capella and them like those guys are making the league because they're athletic. Big, like Plumlee. Plumlee played that dude. Like he's a big that can run the floor. He moves. He's athletic. He can get out on ball screens. Like those are the guys who like making it now, Vlad. And same thing with perimeter guys. And then that's why you're seeing more mid-major plus guys into the league just because they're able to score the ball at a high level. Not a guy who just hit 7 or 8 at a high major level, on a
I
good
feel like we
team.
talked about that. I think like right after the draft or something. I went on draft and like we're talking about like who's that kid going at 48? Who's that kid going at 52? Like like you
Right.
have no idea. Like they were on the roster, but they're on the roster at Duke, they were on the roster at UNC, and it was just one of those situations where it was different. Like you said, that's all I was asking you because I mean I saw it changing lately. Because there's so many guys that can put the ball in the basket. And there's so many good players at all the levels right now. I mean, just given this year, you have a JUCO kid, but he entered the draft, right?
Like,
I think.
Vlad, we had three guys at Hofstra last year. We had three guys who got drafted in the second round. Three from the Colonial Athletic Association. One of the kids I coached at Hofstra, he averaged 27 a game. He was one of the most efficient guys in the league. He shot 60-some% at the rim. He shot 49% on mid-range shots. Like he got drafted with Utah. Same thing with Brantley. He was a 6'8" forward, athletic. They thought like, hey, he could come in, like he could guard multiple positions. He can be a small ball five. He can be a four. Same thing with the kid at UNC Wilmington. He was 6'7", led the country in rebounding. But he was an animal. He's with the Lakers, the defenders, two-way guy. But like those are the guys they taking that. Like they would rather have those guys because they, like this year's a kid at Charleston that they love who could end up being in the mid 40s, like because he 23, 24 games. So like
I was gonna say they can't get score.
those
I've seen
guys
him.
are
I've
getting
seen him
noticed.
play. Yep.
Well, he's like, yeah, those guys are getting noticed now because they look at those numbers and like especially when you can be a guy that's averaging those numbers, but like if you are if you're shooting, less than 40% and this and that, like they trying to look at what translates now. Like analytics is
Yeah.
huge in this game. Like so they look at all those advanced statistics and all that stuff. And but when you got guys who like I was telling you about a kid, Justin Wright Foreman, like his numbers jumped off the charts when it came to analytics. And it's like, well, do we take him and then we put him on a two-way contract because in 2 years or in a year or so, he's in our system. He might be really good. And so that's how it's going now is you'd rather take those guys, put him on a two-way contract, and see what works or see what happens instead of taking the guy from, a guy with potential that you haven't seen as much, like you just said, but take a guy that you've seen a ton at Carolina, Duke, Maryland, Michigan, or whatever. You'd rather take a chance on that guy that you haven't seen as much, that got potential and his numbers jump off the charts, than to take a guy that that's going to be the same guy in 3 years from now. So that's why it's changed a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a lot. Man, Lamar, this has been a pleasure, man. I mean, we always talk hoops. We talked hoops, back when I was at AU. That was a connection right there. As soon as you got on campus and started talking hoops, that was it.
I mean, you had just gotten back from playing with your team, and you were in the gym, and I remember you just like, hey man, you want, can you work me out? And I had just met you, and we started working out, and it became 2-3 times a day. Coach Jones was like, man, you got to slow down with him, man. You don't want to wear Vlad out. I've never worked with anybody like this. Like, he don't want to never stop. And you know what? I've been like, I didn't want to stop either. I love being in the gym and, working out. And it carried on. We had a guy the same way that was at Old Dominion. I was there, Trey Freeman. He was the same way. He was, I got a call on Christmas Eve one time. And my wife was like, is that, she never said no, I couldn't go out. And he could call me at 6 o'clock in the morning. He called me at 10 o'clock at night. He called on Christmas Eve. She was like, is that Trey? And I was like, yeah.
You want to get in the gym?
Yeah, she's all right, yeah, go ahead. So like, it's always been like, I drop a lot of stuff for players, because I want to see them reach their goals. And so I don't ever have a problem with that. That's something that my wife has always understood. I've always been passionate about this. I thank you for allowing me to be able to work with you. And, like, you just don't know what that meant to me back then. Having the best player point out a guy he don't even know. I got the job in June. You didn't get there until August. And, like, it was like, let's go, So, I appreciate that back then. And then even more, like, you addressed it at the beginning, like, he was like, yeah, I worked out with these guys last summer. Like, I feel more comfortable with you working with me. I don't have to spend money for no pre-draft stuff. And so it allowed me to, gain a lot of knowledge. I was, like every day you challenged me and I was looking up more and more stuff to do with you, getting ready for the combine. So, I thank you for that. That's all that did was expand my knowledge and help me out for other guys down the road. So I do appreciate that.
All right, and I appreciate your time back then. I appreciate your time now, man. And we'll stay in touch. And I mean, hopefully we have a summer league so we can meet up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But no, thank you again, Vlad. Have a good one, man. Stay safe.
All right. Thank you. You too.